the cloud.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, here we are. So, welcome to the 10th in our 16-week series of audio-enabled EDA STEP workshop sessions. We're delighted you're here. My name is Annette, and I'm in full recovery from an eating disorder. Before we get started, a few caveats. This session of the EDA STEP workshop is being recorded. We hope to make recordings of this accessible to everyone. Please note that the recordings will not be available on the EDA website until they've gone through the full vetting process. We will, however, be sending information about the recordings to the GSB email distribution list. If you're not currently on the list and you want to be, please send a line to info@eatingdisordersanonymous.org and we'll get you added. Reminder, listening to a recording is not a substitute for attending EDA meetings or working the steps. We encourage you to check out our meetings pages, which include face-to-face, online, and teleconference meetings. Just like what you might find at an EDA group, what you're about to hear reflects experiences and opinions from individual EDA members that may say and do things that don't tally with your own experiences. Please take what you can use and leave the rest. You don't need a sponsor to attend the workshop. We'll all be working the steps of EDA together, myself included. To make things easier for everyone, we've muted everyone as they join. If you would like to be heard, please unmute your phone by using *6 on your phone or Alt-A on your computer. You can mute and unmute using the same key combination, *6 on your phone or Alt-A on a computer. Because there's so many of us, we won't all get a chance to introduce ourselves. However, if you're speaking, please do tell us your first name and where you're from. Last week, we discussed step 5. Nuria led us through pages 165 or 162, actually I thought it was 159 through 167, and Gisele, Leslie, Michelle, and Ellen shared their experience as well. Then we answered questions about step 5. We know it might not have been easy to find someone to hear your 5th step, but we hope you did. Tonight, we're going to go ahead with step 6. Now, if you've not yet done your 5th step, please commit to completing this vital step sometime this week. You don't have to wait to do step 6. Remember, we're practicing patterns, not looking for perfection. So perfection is a bar to good enough. Let's keep pressing forward, doing the best we can. It's important to remember that in this workshop format, it's just about the process of working the steps, and you will have plenty of opportunity to repeat them in the future. Tonight, after a reflection on EDA Big pages 168 to 172, we're going to hear some of EDA's sponsors addressing questions from their sponsees in our panel format. Right now, I'd like to ask anyone on the call who sponsors to please identify yourself so we can call on you during the question and answer session. Now, this doesn't imply that you're currently accepting new sponsees. However, if you are, that would also be great to know. Please let us know your first name and city, and we'll just go around the room for those who are sponsors. Anyone that's a sponsor in EDA on the phone? *6 to unmute. Looks like everybody's still muted. Or nearly everybody. Okay, so we may have lost people who are, hello, is that somebody? Hello? Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you.
I'm going to unmute everybody.
I can hear you.
Oh, okay, that's so good.
Okay.
Terrific, thank you. So we may not have a lot of sponsors on the phone, but luckily I sponsor. And Gisele, you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Gisele, fully recovered from an eating disorder and from Maricopa, and I sponsor.
Thank you, Gisele. And I'm from Phoenix, and I sponsor. Anybody else on the phone sponsor? So I seriously think we have a lot of people, a lot of people have not recognized that this is at a different time than it typically is because we've just switched time zones. So I think that may have affected folks like Nuria and Leslie and Michelle. And so, oops. All right, well, we're going to keep pressing forward. And so moving right along, we're going to go to the next page here. And Gisele, We're going to actually have you talk a little bit about, I'm going to try to minimize my participants list. That's okay. This is not about perfection. So we're going to discuss how steps 4 and 5 inform step 6, reflect a little bit on the EDA Big Book pages 168 to 172 and Workshop Worksheets pages 25 and 26. We'll then do a panel on step 6 and take 5 minutes to list our character defects when we're done with that. Then we'll take step 6 together, which is actually kind of a huge step. So hopefully we'll have convinced you by the end of our hour that you're ready to do this, because it doesn't really matter. I'm going to be clear about this. It doesn't really matter where you are in your program. It's going to be important for you to, let go of some of the more problematic ways that you found yourself over the course of the last couple of weeks in this workshop, or just over the course of your life as a whole. We can, in fact, change, but it means we have to be willing to get out of our own way. And that's one of the first things we can do, is just make a decision to do that, to quit judging ourselves and quit trying to quarrel with ourselves, accept who we are, where we're at, and move on and focus on character building exercises that we'll hear about with step 7. So with that introduction, I'd like to introduce one of our speakers tonight, Gisele, who's going to share a little about her experiences with step 6, which is about we became willing to, wait a second.
We're entirely
ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Yes, thank you, Annette.
So this is Gisele, and I was just looking on page 169 in the middle, in the paragraph in the middle, it starts, and it says, when we took step 3, we agreed to turn our will and our lives, our thoughts and actions over to God, a higher power, or service to the greater good. But our self-centered pain and fear held us back. Many of our defects were still with us. This felt unsettling, even depressing for most of us. What were we to do about these issues? That is what step 6 and 7 are all about. In step 6, we consider whether we are entirely willing to face and be rid of everything that has been holding us back. And Annette and I were talking beforehand here that is a difficult issue. But we go back and we look at the patterns of step 4. For me, a lot of mine was about manipulation, self-sabotage, so I had to look at those things and accept it. Part of it is accepting that I have those things, and above that paragraph in the same page, it talks about it also meant we were vulnerable to crippling levels of resentment, fear, self-pity, shame, guilt, confusion, frustration, and despair. These defects of character, all stemming from self-centeredness, were truly paralyzing, keeping us in a state of constant pain and misery. And that's usually why I had my negative behaviors, my eating disorders, my alcoholism, my blah, you have all of those things. And that's why I kept to those bad behaviors, because I was not seeing. And I need to get rid of those, try and see and get rid of those character defects so that I can truly, be the person I'm supposed to be. But that doesn't happen overnight. It's going to take a little bit, because we've had these character defects and these behaviors for a long time. I still see mine. I still see them manifest. But the biggest part, the biggest part is looking past the negativity, and we're gonna make a list and everything. But looking past the negativity and seeing where I can see positive. It's taken a long time, but if I accept first these things that I'm going to write down, these things about myself that are kind of caca, I can deal with them, and I can say, okay, as I'm going throughout my day, I see something, and I might not have seen it in time, but I saw it, and that's a huge positive. Let's see. we need to carefully consider the criteria by which we determined that we were fine in the past. By the time we reached step 6, we realized that quite a lot of what we thought and did before embarking on recovery was actually problematic. And it didn't seem problematic because those are the things that got us through. We are, what do you call it when you're able to be dysfunctional and still live life? I'm a functioning alcoholic. I'm a functioning eating disorder. I'm functioning, but I want to be more than functioning. I mean, yeah, I can make it through life probably with all those character defects, with all that stuff, but I'm just functioning. I want to be more than just functioning, and we need to get rid of let's see, some troublesome character traits may need to be reconsidered because they are not safe at all. These things that I look at, and they give a few examples here on page 171. We have pride, procrastination, and other forms of laziness, and I fit in with that one. I still can procrastinate. Self-righteous indignation. I'm angry, and I have the right to be angry. You know, look what they did to me. Well, no, I still don't have that right. That does nothing for me. The all or nothing thinking, that sends me off in a whole nother. I need to stay away from that all or nothing. That's like kind of a bipolar. I'm
Labels,
way high.
come on.
I know, right?
Yeah. But no, it's true. I find it like it's a box. I create rigidity for safety.
Right. All or nothing thinking. Lust, because I'm fantasizing and desiring to have something, and I need to watch myself. Focusing on our own needs that are not universal, basic human needs, because these only hinder our recovery. Examples including requiring special foods when not medically necessary, demanding specific attitudes and behaviors from other people. And that I remember my mom going to a treatment center for something, and she came back and she told us, now this is how you need to treat me, and this is what you need to do for my recovery. Well, no, it doesn't work like that. And gossiping is another one of those character defects. I can really get in. I can get into that, but it violates relationships of trust, hurts others, and lengthens the list of things which we have to look at later and make amends for, and that's not cool. And we had, on that same page 172, we all had difficulty giving up some of the old ideas, even when we understood how problematic they were. But resistance to change need not be a long-term impediment to recovery. So long as we abandon ourselves completely to the idea that we will do everything in our power to recover from the crippling self-centeredness that fueled our defects, understanding that these will not move from us without our own action. And this is when we get into step 7. But I have to be willing, and that's another huge one. I have to be willing to go along with these changes that's going to happen. And right now you're probably, I know when you're doing step 4 and into 5, feeling that vulnerability and having, and really looking at myself and seeing where my character defects are. That's difficult, but it's a choice. And that's what it's talking about. It's a choice. Do I want to be vulnerable and go ahead and see these things and let go and see that there's another way, and I do have that strength inside of me to do that? Or am I going to go ahead and keep on with these behaviors because it's hard? And that's the choice. Adam.
Gisele, thank you. That was really cool to hear. I got a lot out of that, and it made me think too. Just we create these rigidity, these boxes of ways of thinking, of tropes for how we see the world, and we think things have to be just so, and it's not okay if they're not just so. And I get lots of, self-pity and resentment from thinking that things have to be a particular way. Well, no, actually they don't have to be a particular way. And my values that are like, well, this is right and that is wrong, Sometimes I'm not a moral relativist. There are really truly right and wrong things, but, in any given person, the only person that I really have any influence over, that matters is me. And I do all kinds of wrong things every single day. And I think, well, gosh, that's not how I want to be. But in my eating disordered thinking, it's like I could never be what I thought I was supposed to be, at least not as good as, or as giving, or as selfless, or as, thoughtful or loving, or any of these wonderful characteristics. I was constantly like rating myself against some kind of ideal, and I could never really measure up. Because even if I was really, focusing on my kids or focusing on something, by, half an hour after that, I'd be either exhausted or frustrated with them, or they weren't behaving right, or, or if I'm in a work situation, it's like I might do something amazing, but, then somebody looked at me sideways and I'm frightened, and it's like just there's constant barrage of emotional things happening because we're human, right? And I hated being human. I really did. And so for me, my eating disorder was all about like, let's just make it so I can function. Functioning was great. It's like, my family was like, we're survivors. Yeah, well, that thinking is useful at some levels, because it does make it possible for you to function when you're like bleeding and dying. Like, okay, fine, I'm surviving. But, that, like Gisele said, that's not really like living. And Gisele's license plate, I'm bringing back up again, that lighten up thing. It's like, I'm gritting my teeth and killing snakes as I go through. And it's like, oh my God, that's no way to set an example for your children. It's like, life is like this amazing, and I do really feel this now. It's like life today doesn't feel like all heavy, like this, like a heavy burden I have to drag through, and I'm just, muscling my way. It doesn't feel like that.
Right.
It really, life can feel free and like amazing. And, you can recapture that sort of like, I don't even as a child remember childlike wonder. I don't know about you, but for me, that was like not a thing. But I do remember, being, entranced by music and just loving certain ideas, and that I still have, and I have it more now than I remember having had it as a kid. Why? Because I'm choosing it. And so that is like part of, we're going to talk about how steps 4 and 5 inform step 6. Well, what does that mean? Well, in step 6, we're saying we're ready to have God remove all these defects of character. What defects are we really talking about? Well, it's the very same ones that we talked about in step 4. Well, what are they really? Well, it really comes down to, is resentment a defect? Well, it actually is representative of the fact that you got them. Because if you're resenting things, that means that you're re-feeling things. You're hanging on to some way that you're sideways in life. Yeah, there's some kind of, it actually speaks to, okay, like I have some kind of attachment to a particular outcome. I wanted things to show up for me in my life in a particular way, whether it's me or other people or circumstances, or there's something that didn't deliver on something that felt like a promise and a resentment. And whether it's a societal promise, like we're going to treat you well and, be fair, or if it's it's a commitment, a marriage vow or something that's broken, we don't have any real direct control over those things. We're going to have resentment. Fear, it's like, fundamentally, I think all creatures, and, you look at animals and you think, well, they can't feel, fish can't feel, whatever. That, honestly, I think fear is like a primal response to things that prevent living things from dying. And it's critical and essential that we have this thing, but it comes up constantly. It is the thing, like that vigilance that we either as predators or prey, it's part of fundamentally being alive in this realm that we understand to be, existence. So there's no way we're ever going to be really rid of fear, and nor should we want to. This is the thing. It's like we should be prepared to walk away from ideas and attachment to things that don't serve the things we think really matter, but respect the fact that we have them. So, you know what? If I'm having a resentment, and we're going to get to this in step 7, it means that I did expect something. And is it okay to expect things from life? Is it okay to, I've invested a lot in specific kinds of things that I think matter. If my investment turns out to be, lost, it's like if you lose a child, that represents a huge amount of hope and love and dreams. And, if that happens, are you going to be resentful? Well, maybe you're going to be rethinking, you're going to be hurt, you're going to be, devastated. And, is resentment going to play a part? You bet it is. You had expectations of a continuation of a relationship that should really, one would hope, would always be there for a parent. Well, that may not be your experience. And I it's terrible when we are faced with circumstances like that. But is that a problem? Is that a crippling defect? Well, if it holds you back from moving forward with your life, it could be. The thing is that fear can hold us back from doing the right thing. Self-pity can hold us back from saying and doing the right things. All of those things that we wrote about, those 8 things, those are our defects. They really are. Step 5, where we're sharing them with another person, all that really does is usually that provides some kind of help in identifying whether or not it's really something that we're going to end up having to make amends for later, or if it's really something that we're really worked up about. It provides perspective, outside perspective. Yeah. It's just because I used to think, all kinds of things were a problem when really they really weren't. And so it's exposing
we're not as negative.
We're not as bad as we think we are a lot of times. And we're not as, because I always thought, well, how I feel is how I really am. But, I was a good mom. I don't feel like I was such a fantastic mom, but we did a whole lot. And anyway, but the things that I felt worst about were not usually the things that I did worst. Other things in the people hearing my 5th step were usually able to point these out to me. It's like, oh, actually, no, you're really into victimhood. And I'm like, what? No, I'm not a victim. Well, hell you are. It's like there were all kinds of things that have come up out of 5th steps over the years. And so the 5th step is both a healing balm of normalcy, provides perspective, but does it really give you what you need to walk away from your defects? And the answer is, of course not, because those defects, for the most part, are built into us. So if we didn't have the ability, to worry about things, if we didn't feel so strongly that we could feel despair, if we, that those emotions are just signs that, we have things that we need to do. We're called to action, either to be of service or to fix something about ourselves so that we can proceed with greater peace and ease. And if we're not paying attention, those signals, they just keep building up until we have to resort to whatever it is that we're stuffing them with to make life feel less unmanageable, to make life feel safer. And that's what an eating disorder really is. It's this is a hallmark of people who are not really able to work through their emotional response to life. Yikes, that's horrible, right? But that's where getting rid of this idea that we have to fix ourselves. Step 6 is the answer to that, because we cannot literally just look at ourselves and do self-surgery and it's like, nope, I'm getting rid of selfishness. Nope, I'm getting, well, it's not even just that. It's like, we don't have a ton of perspective on ourselves. We can solve these same problems in our neighbor. It's like I can hear what Gisele's got to tell me. I'll be like, oh, Gisele, it's like I can come up with solutions, but I can't apply them. Like, I don't have enough perspective to see them in myself. I can see them when I write them out. Like when I write out those resolutions, that's usually some other part of me that's got perspective or that's working through me, that allows me to see, oh, actually, a person of dignity and integrity might respond a little differently than I am to this provocation. But until I share that with somebody, it doesn't gain traction. So that's how steps 4 and 5 kind of tee this all up. Because ultimately, I'm going to discover that I cannot actually, if I'm a jealous person, focusing on how I'm jealous isn't going to make that jealousy go away. If I'm really controlling, and that's and I'm facing that, I've got a new job right now, and I'm supposed to be out there facilitating other people fixing problems. My job is to help them follow a pattern of behaviors that help them identify, how to become more efficient. Can I do this? Well, frankly, my backup behavior is directive. I'll be like, I wonder if we should, so it's like I'll come up with solutions. It's like, no, that's not really what I'm supposed to do. Can I let go of that? Well, yeah, I can claim it. I can say, oh, look at me being directive. That's not what I meant to say at all, and laugh about it. And you know what? That humor helps. But if I wasn't paying attention and like offering that up, like, whoa, I'm walking away from that crap, I probably wouldn't be succeeding at this new job. And so, I've got to really check myself all the time. How do I get there? Well, it's by being willing to let go of these fundamental ideas that I've got to somehow arm wrestle life into shape. It's not going to work that way. I have to show up, be willing to accept my emotions, because Gisele was talking about acceptance. Understanding that I am who I am, and those emotions that I'm busily trying to stuff and get rid of and deny and pretend that it just isn't so. You know what? That is fundamentally me. And I am abandoning myself. I am destroying trust with myself every single time I want to pretend my emotions don't exist. So does that mean I should wallow in them? Hell no. It means that I need to go oh, look, there's me. I'm pooping in the corner. It's like I just really need to call myself on that crap and be willing to let go of it. Okay, and so that comes up a lot. Like, how the heck do we let go of these things? Well, step 6 is about we became willing to, again, step 2 is about became willing to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God, as we understood him. That's step 3, sorry. Became to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Step 3 is about making a decision to do that. Well, step 6 is like, oh my gosh, look at all these things that I have to turn over. But the turning over doesn't mean walking away. It means really reflecting on, ooh, this is actually like me in progress. How am I going to work with this and make the best use of it? So that that question, how do I make use of this, is really where we're specifically asking for help in step 7. But in step 6, we have to recognize what those things are. So in order to do step 6, we actually have to list them, and it's not really that hard. It's really the same list that you came up with in steps 4 and 5, but now you may be thinking, well, I ought to be able to just enact all those resolutions, and my experience is that just doesn't happen. I don't have the power. If I could have done it by making a decision, I'd be there already. It's not like it just, you make a decision and then bam, you can do this, because there's a good reason why you're not doing it already. And it's usually because you have to deal with all of those underlying emotions. And the beauty of it is that we don't actually have to do that much hard work. It's really about just like acceptance. Like, oh, okay, I'm having this feeling. What's this mean? And then being willing to find what's good about it. So if I'm controlling what's good about that, that means that I actually have some degree of confidence that I know what the right answers are. Wow, that's great. I have self-esteem. But again, is that a good behavior? Heck no, it's the wrong behavior. So, well, okay, so, but I have some agency about how I respond to my first response. So I can apply that. What will calm me down enough to know that I can actually, have that humility? Well, it's going to be me putting it in perspective. And I haven't got that when I wake up in the morning. I have to kind of call that into action. How do I do that? I do my step 10 and 11. That's how I do a step 6 every day? No, but that's really kind of what it is. When I do a step 11, for me, that's really about me putting myself on the firing line of life and going okay, I'm going to have a bunch of emotions that feel really uncomfortable, and I'm going to make the best I can, to understand what they are and see how I can apply them in a productive way. So, there are things that happen every single day that do really make me feel like I'm not really going to be successful. And if I look at what those are and I respond accordingly, then I may help people fix a problem, or I may fix my own problem. If I'm not paying attention, I'm almost certain I'm doomed to actually live out the thing that I fear. So I've done a ton of talking here, and I want to, a couple things. We have questions to answer, and I want to make sure we have time to do that. I want to see if there's anybody who's joined who is also a sponsor in EDA. So if you are, would you kindly introduce yourself with first name and city? And also, if you could tell us where you're from, that would be great. *6 to unmute, or Alt-A. Okay,
Hi,
maybe
I'm
not.
Ellen.
So,
Oh, hi, I'm Ellen,
hey,
and I'm
Ellen.
a sponsor, and I'm calling from Texas.
All right, Ellen, great to hear you. Thanks so much for joining. Ellen, do you have any experiences with this stuff that you'd care to share with others?
Well, I guess my personal experience with step 6 has often been that, you know, I have had, I remember the first time that I did the steps, and I got this sense of urgency that I all of a sudden wanted to really go ahead and fix myself. And like it was already been mentioned, you know, the idea of step 6 is not that, you know, that I'm going to now suddenly fix me. You know, it says that, you know, that I became entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. And so, you know, the way that I interpret the step is that, you know, just like in step 3, that this is another surrender step for me. This is another point at which, you know, I have to be willing to let go, and that that this is not about me trying to control my recovery and the outcome of it. And so, and sometimes, you know, I've found that for me, or maybe for sponsees, it can be sometimes overwhelming coming out of step 5, when now suddenly we're faced with, you know, all of these different defects of character. But I think it's important to remember that, you know, that we're not facing this process alone, that we do have each other that we're working this program with, and that we also, through the steps so far, through steps 2 and 3 so far, have also tapped into a power greater than ourselves, or you know, what we've, or like in EDA, we also talk about, you know, finding a higher purpose as well. And so I think that, well, I guess that's probably about what I have to say so far. So anyway, it's good to be on the meeting tonight, and I appreciate the discussion on step 6.
Thank you, Ellen. I just want to reassure folks, if you haven't yet taken step 5, or if you have taken step 5 and you don't feel overwhelmingly great about it, like, wow, that really is a full-fledged job, I'm a little disappointed, you're not alone. Okay, so I'm sure there's lots of people that are like, well, they didn't show up tonight, in part because they're like, I didn't do my best stuff. So the fact that you showed up just says amazing and wonderful things. And honestly, this is, again, your 5th step will be whatever it is. The key thing is that we move forward, and we're willing to have new experiences, because this is an uncomfortable process. If you've done it before, and if you've not done it before, it's still an uncomfortable process, because we're looking at things and pulling things out. It leaves us vulnerable. It leaves us in a state where we're kind of like, oh, what next now? You know, and so if you're feeling any of that stuff, that's what everybody feels, and you're like 100% normal in that regard. So kudos to you for showing up and for being
I can't hear you. I can't hear you there.
Hear me now? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, I don't know what just happened. Are we still recording? I worry. Hold on. I don't know what just happened. That's a little weird. Okay. Trying to see, yes, we're recording. Oh, goody. That's a huge win. I'm trying to make sure that I'm still sharing. Am I still sharing a screen? Maybe that's what stopped. Okay, so starting that share again. Apologies. And yeah, okay, there we go. All right, so but the thing is, we don't change overnight. So this process of, so even with our complete and total willingness, I've yet to run into people who were like, just like snapped their fingers, surrendered everything, and were 100% different. We do actually experience a fundamental transformation as a result of these steps. And this is one of the key ones that allows us to grow. Because when we get out of our own way, when we're willing to like pry our fingers off the problems and just like go, oh yeah, okay, I got that issue, and be willing to show up and do the next right thing, that is actually evidence that we have worked step 6, okay? Just being willing to accept ourselves as we are and going like, okay, so great, what would I be doing if I felt better? Gisele was great about it. Like, I remember you asking me that over and over. I was like, what would you be doing if you felt better? I'd be like, I don't know. Yeah, so this step is really, it does call us into that relationship that we established with step 2. And I hated this because as an atheist, I was looking at this thing like, well, how do I become willing to let something I don't even believe, take away these fundamental problems that I've got? It's like, I just totally don't trust this. Let me go back to my old behaviors. Thank you very much. And, that's kind of where I got stuck. It feels to me like I got stuck in step 7, but really it was step 2. And, when I went back to it and I thought, well, how can I make this make sense for me? This idea of like just getting out of my own way. And it's like, my point here is that I can't fully serve my family or the things that I think are the most critical in life when I'm fettered by this constant negativity and self-judgment, and the behaviors get in the way of everything. It's like, all of that I had to let go of the way I looked at myself. And I had to start thinking about like, hey, you know what? I have talents and capabilities I could put online to apply to things that I know really do matter and that I really don't ever question. And I had to think, well, what are those things? Well, a lot of it was about family, but can I make my family my higher purpose? Well, there are days when it's like everybody in your family hates you, and that's really hard, but that's why it's so important to have balance and find multiple things to invest your time and energy in that utilize your capabilities and your talents and your energy. If you have that, you're a gifted and blessed person, and just keeping that in mind. It's like we're all here with capability to positively affect the world that we know and that we can see and that we can touch. That's super important. So even if you're not a person of faith, just saying, you know what, I'm going to choose today to get out of my own way and focus on the next right thing that helps put me in a position to be of service to things I think really matter. Whatever the heck that is, that's good enough. That is plenty good enough. And, most people who come to this program from a position of atheism or agnosticism do actually find that unsuspected inner resource that has some kind of like inexplicable wisdom that does emerge. And you can choose to see that from a secular point of view, from a spiritual point of view. You can think of that as a conscience. You can think of that as a connection to a higher power. And you can think of it as God. It's like you can put whatever label on that you want. But the truth is, if you're willing to just set things aside, that daily drama, that's how we work step 6. All right. We have some questions, and so I'm going to read them out, and appreciate it if we heard from Gisele or Ellen or anybody else that's worked the steps. In step 6, we aren't beating ourselves up for being who we are. We're reflecting back on our inventories, but I thought we were supposed to put ourselves first so we could recover. Step 6 makes it sound like putting ourselves first is selfish and bad. Can you explain that? It's like, how how do I make progress if I'm being selfish? And, it's like by recovering. I'm so confused.
What just sprung to my mind when she read that question, this is Gisele, what sprung to my mind is balance. Yes, I have to look at me, but it's in a balanced way. It's not all about me. I can get in this selfish, I think what I'm talking about is I get a tunnel vision, all about me, and I can get in that victim role and that woe is me, and that's the selfish self-centeredness that I need to stay away from. Being selfish in recovery and working on myself is not a bad thing. It's I have to, but in that process I'm getting out of myself and connecting with others. And part of step 6 is I'm writing, I'm talking, and I'm listening, and that's getting out of myself, and that's also being selfish. So yeah, but it's balanced. So I'm working on myself, and it might feel selfish, but it's that getting out of that selfish, self-centered, and not actually finding the solution. And that's the difference that I see. That's what I got.
Ellen, do you care to respond to that question too?
Yeah, well, I agree with what has been spoken so far. And yeah, I think that that it's important not to get caught up, I guess, so much in kind of the details of the character defects, and I guess what I had mentioned before about how all of this needs to be fixed right away or right now, and taking time to be able to make these lists and look at where I have need to recover. I think that is important for me and for my recovery, because it allows me later to be able to look at where I can take responsibility and actually make changes in my life. And so I think it really isn't selfish at all to really be taking this time, and any time that we take for ourselves in recovery, I don't see as selfish. I think because the outcome and the benefit is so great. Anyway, I feel a little bit like I'm talking in circles. Thank you for thanks for asking.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for sharing. Really appreciate it. We have somebody from the 314 area code who raised their hand on the Zoom. Please go ahead. Uh, 314 area code, I unmuted you, and then you muted yourself again. Hang on, I'm unmuting you.
I didn't mean to do that. Hello?
Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay.
No
worry. Well,
so
if you have
my baby pressed the button. I don't need it.
okay, no problem.
Thank you.
Okay, no problem. I'm going to mute you again. Here we go. All right. So I did have one other thought about that. It's like, well, isn't working your program kind of like selfish and therefore bad? And so being selfish is not bad, actually. It's like the self-centeredness, like we're making ourselves the center of the universe. That's taking it to kind of an extreme. Selfishness exists so that, it's like, I think of it as fundamental, like when the Bible talks about sin, and it's like, we're all born sinners. Well, yeah, we're all born selfish. We have to be. It's like babies, have to be selfish or they don't get their needs met. So, and the reality is that you're going to continue to be like a child in your relationships until you're figuring out that, oh yeah, actually it's our own responsibility to get our needs met. So it's like that whatever that is to get your basic needs met. And some of us are higher maintenance than others, but the truth is, if you're getting your basic needs met, it allows you to turn to other things to be of service. So today, my job one is always like, okay, so did I get enough sleep? Did I get enough to eat? Have I got my basic relationships? Am I investing in those? How are things going? Financially, am I doing the right stuff? As long as I've got those kinds of things kind of like more or less, it doesn't have to look perfect, but I got to make an effort in, all of those areas and feel and recognize that, oh, look, I'm being an adult here. Yay. That gives me the capability to go like, oh, okay, so I can put my drama on the back burner. I will deal with it. I'll write about it. I'll do whatever because I have drama, right? It's like I have emotions maybe, but that's okay because they're going to tell me, oh, actually, I need to pay more attention to my husband, or, oh, actually, I do need to, maybe this whole thing with work, it's like, I got too much ego invested. Maybe I need to like turn this around. How can I make this better for others? So those emotions that I have continue to inform me every single day. But taking care of basics is job one. It's I can't get past like being childish if I don't do that. So second question, the more I think about my character challenges and the ways I'm still stuck, the worse I feel. I'm really starting to get depressed and I feel like giving up on the steps. What hope can I have if all I can see is defects everywhere now? Gisele?
Well, what comes to mind when I look at that step is that's where it's important to have a gratitude list, because not everything is negative now. It's like what it made me think of is when I'm newly pregnant, all I see are pregnant people, and that's the same kind of thing. But so I have to remember that there are also a lot of great things that I have in me. And so that's why there's a gratitude list, because it's just now I'm seeing my defects. Now I'm seeing it more, which is good. And it just look at it as an opportunity to grow. I get an opportunity to see it a little sooner each time. But have that other perspective of the gratitude of where I am positive. And I have to, and it goes back to, I have to make the choice to also look at things positive. And all these things that I'm looking at, like Annette said before, I may not be as bad as, I'm usually not as bad as I think I am. I make myself out to be this horrid serial killer, I'm not.
Yeah.
But I can make it that big, and it's just I don't need to do that. I need to step back.
Thanks, Gisele. Ellen, anything about like just despairing how many defects and how intractable they are?
Yeah, well, I can identify with, I remember when I did my first fourth step and just fourth and fifth step and just feeling so overwhelmed with all of it. But, I think again that the important thing to remember is that, I think a lot moving forward in the steps, I think is really, really vital, because it kind of carries the momentum and kind of gets me, and it continues to carry me forward and out of being stuck. And then I think as far as like this step in particular, I think that, that again, the focus of, not keeping the focus so much on that, that I'm supposed to be fixing myself. And I think also, if I have these emotions that come up where I'm feeling despairing and I'm feeling negative, I think that's a great time too to reach out to another EDA member and talk about how I'm feeling and get some feedback. Anyway, I think that just like Gisele had said, I'm usually not as bad as I think that I am, and it's important to be able to get perspective on that. And I love the fact that one of the things that we emphasize in EDA are, and we do after the 5th step, we do that gratitude list, and then we also focus on milestones of recovery. So we're constantly looking at, what am I doing right? And what am I doing supportive of my recovery each day, to kind of keep me, focused on the good stuff, because there are positive things that I'm doing that are good. And anyway, that's it for me.
Thank you so much, Ellen. That's really helpful. And for me, I remember feeling this. It's like I got started on that 4th step, and I'm like, man, this is hard. And I remember getting partway through it and thinking, I don't want to do this anymore. This just feels horrible. It's like this is why I have an eating disorder. Make it go away, please. and then working through the 5th step, that was kind of okay. But I've had 5th step experiences that sucked. Really, they did. And then, you're working on the 6th step and you're looking at all these deeds and you're like, I've been like that since the day I was born. That one's been, oh my gosh, I can remember, okay, I was maybe 5. That is never going away. And it just kind of going down this roster and thinking selfish, envious, all these characteristics that are just like, they're universal human characteristics, and it's like bad, 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 bad. I had all these labels. And so, to me, this 6th step is not really just about listing all the bad. It's really recognizing that we really just are human. We have normal human emotions, and that these have impeded us from, and it's like that word defects, and the next question actually, speaks to that a little bit. But that word defect makes it sound like we're broken, and and maybe that's not a bad way to look at it. If you're a person that comes from a position of a strong religious faith, you come broken and you're healed, and maybe that is really a good way to conceive of it. But another way is to recognize that, like, these characteristics that we have are just evidence of our humanness, and it really isn't, there's no necessary attachment to them, because they're all on a spectrum of like intensity, and the very same things that are just horrifying at some really extreme level of intensity. If you're extremely selfish, really you'll have no friends. But some selfishness is essentially you're not going to take care of your basics. You look at jealousy. What could possibly be good about that? We'll talk about that some next week. But really, that is like that you so care about the respect and love of another that you're desperately fearful of losing it to the point of distraction. Well, but there's good stuff in that. There is a relationship that you care deeply about and that you're willing to invest in. That's good stuff, right? So everything kind of exists on a spectrum. And when we're thinking about defects, we could also be thinking of that term differently. And that's the last question is about that. It's like, it says, I thought this program was about finding balance. I get how the 4th step helps us find solutions and the 5th step helps us be accountable for them. But the 6th step just seems so old school and negative. Can't you guys update the language or something? And, really that's true. It's like, okay, if you've got, we use these steps as written, because we wanted to make it clear that we're really, even though some of our ideas are really radically different from how AA, laid it out and wrote about it in the AA text, and at the core, at the heart of it, it's the same. And we wanted to draw that connection really closely. This question is about, like, come on, it's now the 21st century, we should be able to restate things. But I've seen that done, okay, and it really does diminish the power that is there in the historical connection to what works for maladies not unlike our own. And alcohol is but a symptom, just like an eating disorder is but a symptom. And we would do well to remember that. Even though an eating disorder may or may not be an addiction, even though, substances and abstaining from substances is not really what our goal, our program is about attaining. Nevertheless, this process that we use, these steps that we follow to find peace and perspective, to attain this fundamental transformation in how we look at ourselves and life, that is the same. And I wanted and just wanted to make sure that we did not water that down. That's why that old language exists, and I think it's super important to keep it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have to remember this disease, these behaviors was killing me, literally and figuratively killing me.
Yeah.
And so I we get into the, we can sit and joke around and we laugh and that's good. But watering it down, changing things, I'm so strong on not doing it because this was literally killing us. I know for Annette and I, this was literally killing us. To change it, I don't see how that could be a positive thing when this has been helping millions and millions of people.
And there you go, straight from EDA, Gisele's founder. So not planning to change the language, but we do want people to understand that our interpretation, just like we don't really change the Constitution of our country very often or in any significant way when it comes to some of those core principles, this is not that different. It's we're trying to honor the experience of the millions before us. Okay, so moving on, it is actually now time for us to write a little bit. So I hope that you all brought pencil and paper or pen and paper to the party, because we're going to do a little bit of writing. On page 26, we're going to take a 5-minute opportunity to actually write things out. And so here it is. So I think I went forward one too many pages. There. Okay, so please take a few minutes to list the character defects you recognize. For now, please just write on the left column on page 26. So that's important because we're going to use the right column for something else. So there's not very many lines there. Please just list the character defects that you can think of. And we're going to start a timer right now. Okay, so it's been just about 5 minutes, maybe a little bit less, but I just realized we're about out of time. And what we're going to do now, if you guys are ready, and I don't know if you are, but I hope that you're tired of having to deal with your defects. I hope that you've reflected a little bit on what they are. Gisele and I were over here talking about it just a little bit. So is it an awful struggle to be rid of our defects? It can be. Are you ready to let your reliance on God, a higher power, or a higher purpose lead you to a better use of your time and energy? Yes. I am. Are you ready to let go and let God?
Yes.
I am. All right. So for you on the phone, we're going to go ahead and just say this together. So if you will unmute your phones, *6 or Alt-A. All right. On the count of 3, we're going to read step 6. We became willing to let God remove all these
defects of character. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character.
Awesomeness. Yay! Woohoo! We did it.
Yowza.
Moving on.
Moving on. So next week, we're going to be doing step 7 next week.
Woo-hoo!
And that is like, what a relief, actually.
Yes.
It is. But there's work with step 7. We have way more in our step 7 than the original text did. Read Big Book pages 172. halfway through page 179. So it's a little bit more reading, about six and a half
good.
pages.
So good.
And then complete reading through step 7, workshop worksheet, page 27, and then go back and finish page 26. It's a little weird. You read 27, go back and do 26, but it'll make sense after you've done the reading. All right, well, listen, I hope you all have a wonderful week. We normally do mention the 7th tradition. If you're a member of EDA and you want to contribute to keep holding workshops and supporting our online services, please do contribute as you can. There's a link to PayPal on the EDA website. And now we'll close with a version of the Wii version of the Serenity Prayer. All right, so if you're muted, unmute on the count of 3.
God,
God, grant us
serenity
To
accept
the
the
things
things
that
that cannot change,
the courage
the
to change,
courage to change the things
we can.
and the
and
wisdom
to know the difference.
All right.
Yay!
Hey,
Hallelujah.
Thank
Thank
Have
you,
a great
everybody.
week.
Do we,
Thank you, Joe.
this is my first time back at, since the first meeting. Do we ask for sponsors on these meetings ever? Like if
Well,
willing to sponsor or?
yeah, thank you. Hang on, I'm just going to stop the recording.
Oh,
Hold
sorry.
on. No, it's
you're
fine. It's just me. I've got to figure out how to work the controls better. There we go. Stop the recording.